The very first coaching insider in the history of NFL Network, NFL Total Access, was that at the time, the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, I fired up Niners Cam for this man in 2003, week 11, when the NFL Network came on the air. He is Jim Mora. Good to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And you are representing in this first segment of here the Honda Insider Report. Let's get right to it here,
okay.
Jim. The number one ranked quarterback on your draft board is?
Josh Rosen.
Okay, you did not stutter.
I did not.
Why do you think people are thinking that you're denigrating him?
I don't know, Rich. You know, I think the interpretations of what I said have just been misconstrued. You know, I look back at everything I've said about Josh since I've known him, and I don't believe I've ever said anything negative publicly. I'm sure, you know, in times of frustration, like we all do, oh, dang Josh. But I think when I made the statements I made, I was very clear. I was very concise. I was very complimentary of Josh. I love this young man. I think he's great. I think he's a great player, a great person. He's a great friend of my kids. You know, I love that my kids have him as a friend. It all started when I said that if I were the Cleveland Browns, I would take Sam Darnold over Josh Rosen. Subsequent to saying that on the air, I text Josh and said, hey, I'm about to say that I would take Sam Darnold over you for the Cleveland Browns. And he just said, thanks, Jim. Not like, oh, thanks. Is relief. Just thanks, Jim. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks for giving me that
heads up. Because I want to let we have that type of relationship. But people said, "Oh, his coach is taking a shot at him." And then when I talked about him needing to be intellectually stimulated, people took it the wrong way, unfortunately. And I'm in a very positive way. I've had now 6 years with what I am referring to as millennials. These kids in this this age group where they need intellectual stimulation. You know, they can't stay locked in forever. They're, constantly on their phones. You're seeing more and more coaches now that'll give players, even at the NFL level, after a half hour, a break to check their Twitter and check all their social media. And I think that you have to adapt how you teach to the way these kids learn. And that's all that I was saying. And people just took it, chopped it up to make it fit their story. I should have known that. And of all of that, I think the thing that I regret, and there's really only one thing I regret, because I stand by everything I said, and I will go to the grave saying I was never negative about Josh, is that it caused some disruption in his life and his preparation. You know, and he told me this because we were in contact all the time. He said, it's been hard because the media has been bothering me, asking me why my coach doesn't like me. I've had some coaches call me saying, hey, why is your coach saying these things about you? And I wish everyone had listened to the whole thing.
Well, then let's get into the whole thing then, okay? Because I have, obviously, the quote right here.
But that's just part of the quote you've got.
Okay, so then, well, I mean, you said the quote from, this is in the Peter King MMQB, he needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored.
Right.
So, but that in itself, it sounds like he isn't going to apply himself.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Right.
When you say it that way, Rich, it makes sense. But look, you have 3 young children, and
I do.
And as they get older and they get into that age where this phone and the instant access to information becomes so important in their life, you're going to see that they need constant stimulation. It's the way that our world has gone, and so every player needs that exact same thing, not just Josh. But this is, as you know, he is incredibly intelligent. He wants to be challenged. He wants to be a guy that has high demands put on him. He has high standards for himself. He was great to coach, and he was never condescending. I made the comment, if you can tell him why, he would ask why. It was never like, why? It was like, why? So I understand it better, so I can go out and perform better. If you told Josh, hey, throw a slant, he'd say, do you want it on the front pad or the back pad? Not, so we're talking inches. So this is the type of young man that a team is getting if they draft him. I say this about all these young players, and especially quarterbacks, is they have to understand that the NFL is a different level than they've ever been at.
Well, I think having him being in the seat that you're in right now, just what is that, about a month ago now, right? That I could send. He's going to be a guy that wants to get the playbook immediately.
Yeah,
he's a guy that's going to want to take over the quarterback room immediately. He, in his ESPN article, he said that he wants to have more rings than Brady, which is an interesting way of saying, because I think he's maybe now going overboard to show everybody how committed he is. You also said, though, that if you can hold his concentration level and focus only on football for a few years, he will set the world on fire. And then you did say he's had so much ability and he's a really good kid, which obviously we're not going to talk about that part of it. But but the
let's stay with the controversy, right?
No, because for somebody who has been in a room, seeing what his concentration level is, being with coaches that you have hired to make sure that he does have that concentration level, it's jarring to hear that he might not have that and that he needs, quote unquote, to get it, whereas others that might be available in the draft don't.
See, I think what you're saying makes sense.
Okay.
But once again, Peter decided what he wanted to write out of a half-hour conversation. All right. So Josh is like every kid. All right. Listen, there was a great article I thought that vindicated me last week in USA Today by Matt Jones. And they talked to Sean McVay, who I think you and I would probably agree is one of the brightest minds and at least young minds in professional football right now.
No doubt.
And he agreed with everything that I said. And he talked about these young men needing to know why, needed to be stimulated. They interviewed D'Angelo Hall, who talked about, the modern athlete has more interest than just football. They have more access to things outside of the football world. And so you have to be able to harness their concentration when they're in the building. And then as a quarterback, you have to be able to make sure they understand that there are some extra things that they need to do after they leave the building in order to be prepared for the next day or for the Sunday or Monday or Thursday or Saturday games that we have now in the NFL.
Right.
So that was my point. I at no time am saying that Josh can't do that. He does do that. For people that would question his commitment, question his toughness, question whether he loves football, I've known him now for 6 years, 7 years, and in my mind, there's no question. Toughness, this is a tough guy. He's taken some hits. He's hung in there. He keeps coming back. Competitiveness. Look at the Texas A&M game this year. We would have been blown out. I mean, absolutely blown out had Josh Rosen not grabbed our team and said, listen, compete like I compete. And then his love of football, he stated it, I believe, very eloquently, is that if I'm a young man of means, which everyone thinks I am, and I don't know what means is, he says, and I am intelligent. I have a degree from UCLA, and I can do anything I want. My dad's a doctor, and I'm Wharton School of Business and Lippincott Publishing. I can do anything I want, but I choose to play football. It's because I love it. And I think this, Rich, is that everything that he's done since high school at St. John Bosco through UCLA is leading him to his ultimate goal, which is to go win Super Bowls in the NFL. And so I think he gets it. I'm fired up for the kid.
Okay, and yet, with the Browns on the clock, you think Sam Darnold's a better fit?
And that's a hard one to explain. I'll go to a couple things here. I'll talk about Andy Dalton first. Andy Dalton plays the game, to me, similar in fashion to the way Sam Darnold does. And Hugh Jackson had a lot of success with Andy Dalton. That's why he's a head coach in Cleveland. I believe that Sam... And look, I haven't talked to Sam about this, and I do not want to insult Sam, but, Sam didn't get all the acclaim that Josh did growing up. He wasn't the number one ranked player in the country, so maybe there's a little bit of an underdog mentality buried deep in there that maybe would benefit Cleveland. So that's what I meant. There, for certain players, there's certain teams that fit them, and there's certain teams that don't fit them, and I think that I think Josh would be wildly successful in Cleveland, but I think Sam's a really good fit there.
Well, I mean,
I still think Josh is the best player, the most NFL-ready player that I've ever been around.
Week one.
Well, and week one, day one. I'm gonna tell you what. You draft him, put him in the huddle as a starter the first day. Don't mess around. Just put him in the huddle, challenge him, and he will take the reins and he will go.
And I said, I started this conversation with you, Jim Mora, saying how you've been part of this show since the beginning. 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago.
On this show, when you said that Rosen could be the number one overall pick in the draft with Winston and Mariota.
And Goff, too.
And Goff.
Okay, do you remember
all
when,
of those guys?
After Josh's freshman year, Jared Goff was drafted number one by the Rams. Turned out to be a great pick. I mean, the guy is an up-and-coming rising star, and especially with Sean there. And now Jed Fish, former Michigan guy, is there and doing great things with the Rams. I made the statement. I said I believe that Josh Rosen would have been the best quarterback in the draft that year. I'm not coming off of that. as great as Jared Goff has done, I still believe Josh at that time was the most talented, and he's only become more talented. One of the things that really benefited him this year was having Jed Fish, who was our offensive coordinator, who has an NFL background, was the coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is a guy that has real strong ties with Bill Belichick, able to kind of show Josh what it's going to really take to be an NFL caliber quarterback, not just from a physical standpoint, but from all the other things that you have to do to be successful off the field.
Jim Mora here on the Honda Insider Report, brought to you by the Honda Dream Garage Spring Event. The best place to leave winter is in your rearview mirror. Get a great deal right now on the versatile 2018 HRV. The Honda Dream Garage Spring Event is happening now at your local Honda dealer. Back in 60 seconds, I want to ask you what you think the Giants should do here.
Okay.
Because if you say Darnold won, let's just say that.
Well, there's all this talk now of Josh Allen.
Exactly.
Which just,
and
boy,
if Darnold
throws everything into a tizzy.
It does. And I just want to know what you having been in draft rooms as you've been and been in situations that you have been, what is going on with the Giants? Dave Gettleman.
Okay.
They had Chubb and they had Barkley and they've had Rosen and they've had them all, essentially. That's next year with the Jim Mora, who's been also hanging out on Path to the Draft on the NFL Network of late as well. Back in 60 seconds on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, another segment here with Jim Mora, who, as I said, has been hanging out on the NFL Network. This was like your third stint, pretty much, for the NFL Network.
It is.
Right?
Feels like it's like coming here. It feels like coming home.
I will never forget when you interviewed Mike Vick.
Yeah.
You sat down, and you told, what was the question you said about the DVD? Or
if
something
I'd
like
put
that?
$100 in a DVD, would you ever found it? He said no. That was the first interview I'd ever done in my life. They asked me to do that, and I said, I'm a coach. I don't know how to do it. But I went back there and sat with him for over an hour.
And that was great because the DVD, it would have been the DVD of game film.
Preparing,
right.
say it was a Tuesday, and you gave him tape to take or DVDs to take home to study of your upcoming opponent.
Right.
And I said, if I'd put money in there, would you ever found it? No. Mike played on instinct, and he had instincts.
He sure did. And again, I guess that's part of this whole issue here, is that when you see a talented kid and instincts are so apparent, right? Mm-hmm. And you see that in an evaluation, how do you know that this kid is going to be the one who doesn't see the figurative $100 bill in the hypothetical game film DVD? How do you go through that?
I guess you really go back, and NFL teams are doing this right now, and they're talking to high school coaches, they're talking to college coaches, they're talking to guidance counselors, they're talking to
janitors, right?
They're talking to everybody. They're going into the equipment room and talking to the equipment manager in your athletic training room and talking to your athletic trainers, and how does he treat people and how does he react, and coaches, how does he study? Because they want to. If you're going to invest all this money in a pick and a player, you need to know everything that you can possibly know about him.
What do you think the Giants should do it too right now? Because they have so many options.
They have so many options. And if Jared Allen were to go number one, they've even got more options.
Right.
Because then the whole draft is going to go into a tizzy, and it's going to be fun to watch you.
Well, because that means that because that means Darnold would be sitting there at 2, and maybe the Giants do love Josh Allen, but not enough to tell Eli that the clock is ticking faster than what's going on in his head. Mm-hmm. I guess it does all start with the evaluation of Eli Manning and the evaluation of Davis Webb before you make any maneuvers.
Yeah.
When you see Eli, what's your evaluation of him, do you
think? That
he's
right I think what the Saints did a while back when they reloaded around Drew Brees, I think we might see something like that. Like Eli's our guy. We're either going to take Saquon Barkley, or we're going to, get the motherlode haul and pick a whole bunch of guys who can help Eli take one more run at this thing. I haven't been in the draft rooms,
right.
But the next 2 weeks, they'll be sitting there for hours and hours and hours going through every scenario. They'll be answering all the unanswered questions they have about prospects. They'll be fielding calls from everybody to set up possible trade scenarios, and they will be answering the question that you just asked. Are we going to put all of our faith in Eli? Or are we going to go draft a guy that replaces Eli in a year or two? And if we draft a guy that replaces Eli in a year or two, are we then doing the same thing that we did to Eli last year, which is undermining him? My gut feeling is that they'll probably take Saquon Barkley. He's a great player. He's a guy that can help Eli. He's a guy that can help that defense that struggled last year. Now they have a new coordinator who's going to do great things. But it's going to be really those first 5 picks, it's going to be really fun. And the Browns, as we know, they have 2 of the 4, and they can go in a lot of different directions.
Well, they could move from 4 to 2 if they want to do their quarterback and Barkley as well, and give Gettleman maybe some more picks in his back pocket, and all he's got to go down is drop 2.
I know.
And the Jets aren't going to be the one to call him up. I don't think unless they do fall, unless Darnold somehow does drop to 2 and they love him at some point.
What if Darnold drops to 3? Because I think we're all assuming that Josh is going to go to the Jets. Yes, I do. I think there's a possibility there. And I think if all of a sudden the Jets are on the clock and they've got Josh and they've got Sam, they've got a situation they probably didn't anticipate weeks ago, but right now they are deep into that discussion.
They are, right? Yeah. And so for our fans listening and viewing who would
I would take Josh Rosen.
No, I know that. I'm not going to put you in that because it fits too in New York. No. What I'm saying is Gettleman going into draft night.
Yes.
Will have already heard from, say,
everybody.
The Bills,
yes.
the Broncos,
yes.
or anybody else that's
yes.
totally off the board,
yes.
and will know already in his right-hand
sure.
drawer what they're offering, right?
And then they'll go
based
back
on the player who might be available
yes.
to. That's
yes.
all worked out,
it's
right?
worked out, and then they'll take those 10 minutes, and they'll all gather up the primary decision makers, and they'll say, okay, we've made this decision. Are we all good with it? Because as an organization, this has to be an organizational decision. That's the only way it's going to work. It can't be Dave's decision. It can't be Pat's decision. It has to be the Mara's deciin or Tish's decision. Yeah. It has to be the New York Giants' decision. And they will have made that decision. Then they'll gather up, and then you'll make it, well, let's go to the commissioner, and Roger will step up, and he'll have something to say.
But I'm sure it's also 4 minutes left on the clock. Say Bills sweeten their offer.
Which right. they in the bill, because the Bills are sitting there and they're going, okay, this is our offer to them right now, but let's keep this over here, and if they're balking at the last minute, we'll right. add it in. And so there's going to be a lot of drama, and it's going to be really fun.
Just 10 minutes.
And I'm going to be there at the draft in the
fantastic.
green room
you will be.
with Colton Miller and Josh are both going to be first-round picks. Right. So there's nothing better than being there with players that you had a chance to coach and watching them realize their dream.
And what was that thing you wrote out for Miles Jack when he went undrafted in Chicago? What was that thing? You wrote something.
Yeah, I wrote him a note. Gosh darn it, Rich! I wish I could remember that.
Right
but I was trying to manage his emotions.
Look it up, Chris. I know, because he fell all the way through to the second round.
Yeah, it was. We were sitting at a table. We thought we were going to go 5th, and I knew that he probably wasn't, because Gus Bradley had said, "Jim, we have concerns about his knee," and I tried to prep Miles for that. And Miles is a kid I'd known since he was 12. I love the guy, and. It was painful to sit there with him. So I'm sitting there as an older gentleman saying, how can I help this young man? How can I help him through this really difficult time in his life? And so I did. I had something that I wrote to him. It was a saying or a quote.
I remember you had that
you
put
gave
that up
it
there.
to him.
And
yeah.
by the way, he's now balling out, and
great.
that defense is filled with alpha males who can fly around to the football.
Yeah, and he's going to get his money that he didn't get in the first round later on, but with They had the chance now to take Jalen Ramsey, and then they were able to go get Miles Jack.
Right.
And you talk about 2 impact players in their first 2 years that have completely transformed the way they play defense.
Speaking of I guess old guys in a way, I don't mean to say this. How's your dad?
My dad is fantastic.
How's Senior?
He's
good?
Really good. He's playing a lot of golf. He's working out. He looks healthy.
How old is your dad now?
Well, he's in his early 80s, and his birthday is May 24th, and he's spending a lot more time in New Orleans. Sean Payton has been so gracious to, kind of really embrace my dad and keep him around the team, which I know that I appreciate greatly, because, he's a lifer. He's a football lifer, and the Saints were a huge part of his career, and Sean has been so gracious.
Do you still want to coach?
I do, yeah. I love to coach. It's all I've really ever done, and I like doing the TV things that I'm doing. But I do want to coach. I love the impact you can have on young people. I love the competition. I love the adrenaline rush. I love to win. I like the challenge of overcoming a loss, and I'd sure like to have another shot at it. I've learned a lot. Every time you fail or you get fired or something doesn't happen right, if you do a great job of self-reflecting and don't point the finger at others, you have a chance to get better. And I think that's happening.
So what'd you learn from your time in Westwood then?
I'm still learning. Okay, it's still pretty fresh. Yeah, I'm still trying to really remove the emotions from it and look at it practically, and what I needed to do better, and not point the finger and say, well, they shouldn't have fired me. That's not going to help me at all. What's going to help me is to look at myself and say, what can I do better? And I'm still doing that.
Okay, so you want to coach college, pro?
I just want to coach. I love coaching, and I did love coaching college football. And if there was a great college job, I'd take it. And because I love the impact, as I said, you can have on these kids. You take some kids that really, there was a wall in front of them that was going to be hard for them to hurdle over, and you're able to, help them find a way to get over that wall to their dream. And that doesn't necessarily mean playing in the NFL, but it means, a job, a passion, a path to success and happiness and contentment. And, it was just like a great feeling when these young men that you were so invested in reach their dreams. It was like last year with Tack at the draft.
Yeah.
Takaris, you were there. It was.
Yeah, we had the photograph of his grandmother.
Yeah. So I was sitting with him in the green room and kind of working the phones between Dallas and Atlanta, trying to get one of them to take him because they both liked him. So I'd call Dan Quinn and say, Dan, I just got off the phone with Jason, and they're going to take him. And then I'd call Jason. I'd say, Jason, Dan is going to take him, because I wanted to help Tack.
Sure.
And when he was picked, that emotion that he showed, and you remember Dion interviewing him, and he threw an F-bomb down.
On live TV.
It was like, he had his grandma's picture, and he carried that all night.
She had just passed away, correct?
Well, she'd passed away when he was in high school. And he made her a promise on her deathbed that he would be a first-round draft pick. And the great thing for me was that the moment we got to spend alone, leaving the draft after all the media stuff, and everyone was at the party, and it was just Tack and I in a car going to the party, and he's on his phone, and he's checking his Twitter, and Matt Ryan just, direct messaged me, Julio Jones just direct messaged me, and then he would look at me, he'd go, Coach, and tears, I'm a first-round draft pick, and then he'd go back, and it was like, I just got goosebumps doing it. This is why we do this. For these kids at this point in my life, this is why we do it for these kids.
Neat stuff. Say hi to your dad for me.
I will.
So see, he's still doing Saints games next year.
Yes, yeah, he loves it.
The best moment, Mike, play it. The best Jim Mora moment. We have it always ready. This was when they, no the latest one of those when they were 0-3. You got that over there, Mike?
Season is not over.
When he started screaming at his colleagues.
How about when he didn't know the mic was live and he cussed?
Oh yeah.
That really embarrassed him. My dad, he doesn't like that. It really embarrassed him. And I told him, I said, Dad, that was a great moment. That was you. That's what people love, is you're authentic. He said, it was so embarrassing. He said, no, people love you, Dad, because you are real.
Authentic.
Yeah.
Jim, always great having you on. Please come back.
Thank you. Anytime.
You got it.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.